So let's talk about a heist. You guys love heists. Let's talk about a recent heist, and not the Louvre. The Louvre was a great one. It was a lot of it was really interesting and stuff like that. But we're still learning about that. Let me tell you about a heist, and it kind of is French, but fake French. Okay, my Canadians will know about this, but since there's like 8 of you in the world, the rest of you may not know about this. Let me tell y'all about the Great Maple Heist of 2012. The Great Maple Heist of 2012. This is a real thing. This is a real thing. Let me give you a TLDR on the Great Maple Heist, okay? You may not be aware of this, but maple syrup is worth more than oil. 1 barrel of maple syrup goes for about $1,300. That's 26 times what oil goes for. That is 26 times more expensive than a barrel of oil. That's right. Now, unlike oil, which is in the ground and just is reliant on how much you get out and production and stuff like that, but it's still just sitting there, maple syrup is different. Maple syrup is reliant on the winter, or on the weather, right? And in the winter, when it's super cold, they don't produce as much maple syrup, so prices go higher. And when it's really warm and the weather's good and stuff like that, there's too much of it, right? So they had a regulation. They had a regulator out there to make sure that we kind of keep control of it, right? But it turned out that they created a fucking cartel. The maple syrup cartel. Now, you may say, wait a second, Stocky, is Smiley coming back? No, I say, not that kind of cartel, okay? I'm talking about an economic cartel, all right? This is a different kind of cartel. And it was called, funny enough, the Federation, okay, is a long name, okay? Excuse me on this. The Federation of Quebec. I told you it's a French, but not the real French, okay? It's the Quebec French where they talk like this, l'argent, la croissant, okay? They talk the French. We are not really French, okay? We pretend to be French because we think it makes us superior, but we don't want to be a part of France. We want to stay in Canada and take the money, okay? So we will keep here in Quebec and we will take your money, okay? And we will pretend that we are French and we will speak French around you thinking we are superior. But we are really no better than the people we stick our nose on. Très mauvais. Putain. So, here we are. The Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers, okay? Maple Syrup Producers. Why are they a cartel? The Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers controls 77% of the world's maple syrup production. 77% of the world's maple syrup production is run through the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers. And they have a very tight control on this. So what do they do? Well, as any cartel would do, they are making sure that supply chains and everything is good, that there's enough there, that when there's more demand, the supply goes up, less demand, supply goes down. They're very, very, very active on how they make their money. They ain't stupid. Anyone suspected of selling maple syrup on the black market, and yes, there is a maple syrup black market. Anyone suspected of selling maple syrup on the black market, even if there is no proof that they are doing it, is monitored. They send private security and all kinds of shady shit to monitor them. And they have to pay for it. That's how it's a cartel. If we think you're doing some shady shit, we are going to monitor you and make you pay for it, regardless of if we find something or not. And there's actually like an underground black market for maple syrup. I'm not even joking about that. So after a while, the producers, all the actual producers, starting getting pissed off about this. Like, bro, you're monitoring me even if you don't have any proof, and then I gotta pay for this, and you guys are like fucking with me. Like, I got more maple syrup this year. I thought I was gonna make more money, but you decide that you're gonna cut production. I'm not gonna get paid for this. They were getting kind of pissed off about it, right? And there was a goddamn maple syrup producer rebellion. Okay? Not like, you know, they took to the streets and burned shit down kind of rebellion, but there was like a rebellion. They started suing left and right. Motherfuckers started cutting down trees. Okay, in the middle of the night. These guys are out there fucking middle of the night fucking chopping down and fucking chainsawing maple syrup trees, right? Maple trees to get back. There's a goddamn rebellion, okay? All right? There's a goddamn fucking rebellion going on. They even started burning down what was called, and I know your mom has one of these and you think, "Oh, that's a cool place." She uses it for something you don't realize, but you know this name. They're called sugar shacks. They started burning down sugar shacks. This was an actual rebellion going on, and this was like 15 years ago. There was a rebellion over maple syrup, okay? Some of y'all, you in Canada are like, yeah, it actually happened. The French are like, it's what you fuck with our maple syrup. We fuck with you. But Americans are like, wait, what? Yes, this is true. Actual rebellion. And so they started doing this. And it turned into a really sticky situation. Now, This led to the Great Maple Heist of 2012. So now, rebellion has started. We've got maple syrup trees being cut down. We've got people suing. We got sugar shacks getting burnt down. We got a cartel running shit. So some guy who used to work for one of those producers hatched a plan. And he got 3 or 4 other guys that were in the industry, a truck driver, a fucking guy who knew about where the reserves was. Now, understand something. The fucking cartel had a national, Canada has a national maple syrup strategic reserve. So all y'all making fun of companies that have like a fucking fart coin reserve, there's a national strategic maple syrup reserve in Canada. And so what the cartel did is anytime they had an abundance of maple syrup and they wanted to keep costs low, they just put it in barrels and they put it in this giant warehouse. Because you had to get the maple, you had to milk the tree. You know what I mean? You can't let the tree get too full. You can't have blue maple trees, blue maple, you know? So you have to milk that tree. You have to empty that tree out. Okay? But you have to put that syrup somewhere. So they put it in these barrels and put it in the reserve warehouse. Okay? Well, these guys know about this. The summer of 2012, inspectors go to the strategic reserve and they check it out. And they hit a couple barrels and they hear boom. They're fucking empty. So they check out and they've got more and more that are empty. They open some up and they're filled with water. Wait a second. What? Turns out 12.5% of the entire maple syrup reserve was missing. 12.5% of the entire strategic maple syrup reserve was missing. That's 540,000 gallons. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $16 million missing. It's time for us to play a game of Clue. We have to figure out this heist. Huge investigation starts going on. This is like the biggest investigation Canada has had since, I don't know, fucking War of 1812, okay? Because they didn't investigate, Catholic schoolyards very, very well. But this is like the biggest investigation in Canadian history, okay? Not seriously, but just keep going with me, okay? And so they did this investigation. They followed up. They did all this. They found out. And motherfuckers, here's the problem with heists. People talk. The less people you have in a heist, the better you're off to. You might get less, you might have more people on your heist because you think, I'm going to get more money and we're going to make more money and stuff like that. But more people can talk. More people can talk. You just need one motherfucker to squeal. And they started finding out. They started following leads. And guess what? Somebody talked too much and they found out the ringleaders. So they get the ringleaders. They bring them back. And it turns out, here's how it happened. Here's what they did. And they could have got away with it if they weren't lazy. All right? Here's what happened. These guys went and made custom barrels that looked exactly like the ones in the warehouse. The warehouse didn't have any security, right? Because nobody thought somebody's going to come and steal the fucking maple syrup. These guys used access that they had from their connections, got into the warehouse, took this barrel, filled it up with water, dropped it off, switched it out with the real barrel. These are replicas they made themselves. Put it in there. They would then go to their little fucking layer and they would siphon out the maple syrup. They would siphon out the fucking maple syrup. Then drive back, fill it up with water, drive back and drop it off and get their replica back. And they did this over and over and over again. Then they would take the maple syrup, all right? They would take the maple syrup, go to New Brunswick and sell it on the black market to the United States, Japan, and Germany. There was an entire fucking bootleg market for this shit. They would go to New Brunswick and sell it to buyers in the US, Japan, and Germany. All right, we're getting deep here, okay? We're getting deep here. And it was working great, but here's the problem. It takes a lot of extra time to get the barrel, fill it up, switch it out, go do this, take it back, fill it up with water. So what did they start doing? They just started emptying barrels directly. Fuck it, let's just go there and save the time and just siphon it straight from the barrels. Sounds like a good cost-cutting measure, right? Got lazy. So before this, when there was an inspection, they would go and they would tap the barrel. Boom. It was full. It was sealed and it was full. No problem, right? Because if you're siphoning it, you don't break the seal. So if you get a replica, you do this, you siphon it out, you fill it up with water, you put it in there, it's full, they move on. But because they left empty barrels because they got lazy, that's what led to the investigation. And so eventually, they caught these guys and they all went to prison. But they lucked out because they got sent to Canadian prison. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the story of the Great Maple Heist of 2012. Thought you might find that interesting. I love doing these stories. I love doing it. This is fun. This is fucking fun. Like, I wish I could, do this for a living.